Trading a veteran quarterback to a division rival would have been shocking under any circumstance, but this wasn't about strategy. It was about control. Jimmy Haslam's fingerprints are all over this move, a power play that forced Shedeur Sanders to the forefront whether the locker room was ready or not. What looked like a simple trade quickly revealed something deeper: a fractured team, a frustrated coaching staff, and a front office more concerned with shaping headlines than sustaining stability.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The Browns' decision to send Flacco to Cincinnati doesn't just change the depth chart, it rewrites the power structure. Ownership's insistence on fast-tracking Sanders has stripped authority from Kevin Stefanski and created open tension within the organization. What's unfolding in Cleveland isn't just a quarterback transition, it's a leadership crisis disguised as a roster move. The video breaks down how Haslam's decision reflects a broader NFL trend, where star power and ownership ego increasingly outweigh football logic. Sanders' arrival brings excitement, but the cost is steep: a fractured locker room, a weakened coaching voice, and a future now balanced on the shoulders of a quarterback who hasn't yet proven he can carry it. The Cleveland Browns just made the kind of move that doesn't just shake up a roster, it rips the lid off an organization. Joe Flacco is out, shipped to division rival Cincinnati. And in his place? Shedeur Sanders, the young, untested quarterback with all eyes on him. The message? Loud and clear. This isn't about football strategy anymore. This is about power. Because this wasn't a routine quarterback shuffle. This was ownership stepping into the huddle and calling the shots, overruling coaches, disrupting team dynamics, and forcing through a decision that says more about internal chaos than long-term planning. Joe Flacco's trade wasn't just about getting younger at quarterback. It was the final act in a weeks-long internal power struggle. One side wanted experience. The other wanted headlines. And ownership won. Reports of tension inside the Browns building aren't new, but this move lays it bare. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and his staff didn't want this. They resisted the elevation of Sanders. They pushed back. But when the owner's will becomes law, there's not much room left for coaching authority. What you're seeing now is the unraveling of the traditional football hierarchy. Decisions once made by coaches, scouts, and systems are now being overridden by billionaire instincts and branding strategy. Jimmy Haslam didn't just want Sanders on the field, he wanted him front and center. And now he's got it. At what cost? That's the question rattling every corner of the Browns organization. Because it wasn't just a personnel shift. It was a public stripping of Stefanski's control. This is the kind of move that fractures a locker room, drains morale, and leaves players wondering who's really in charge. When veterans see a trusted leader like Flacco abruptly traded away, after holding the team together, they don't just shrug and move on. They start questioning everything. Flacco wasn't just a stopgap quarterback. He was a stabilizing presence. A voice in the locker room. A guy who knew how to command the huddle and absorb pressure. Replacing that with Sanders, no matter how talented, comes with consequences. Because this isn't just a football decision. It's a statement. One that says hype now beats experience. Ownership beats coaching. Narrative beats nuance. And let's not pretend this was a clean trade. Flacco went to Cincinnati. A division rival. A team that now has inside access to Cleveland's playbook, terminology, tendencies, and locker room culture. That kind of move isn't just risky, it's reckless. Especially in a division like the AFC North, where every game is a war and every inch matters. You don't just trade veteran quarterbacks to your rivals unless you're either desperate or fractured. And right now, Cleveland is both. The trade also hands Cincinnati a strategic advantage that can't be ignored. Flacco knows this system. He knows the checks, the audibles, the weaknesses. And now he's sitting in Bengals meetings, dropping that knowledge into the hands of a playoff-caliber team. That's not just bad optics, it's a tactical blunder. One that could haunt Cleveland for the rest of the season. And yet, ownership pushed forward. Because this isn't just about football anymore. It's about control. It's about image. Shedeur Sanders brings excitement, buzz, media attention. And for Jimmy Haslam, That seems to matter more than stability. But buzz doesn't win games. Experience does. Chemistry does. Cohesion does. And right now, the Browns have none of that. Inside the locker room, the vibe is tense. Veterans aren't thrilled. Coaching staff is splintered. The organizational message is blurry. Who's in charge? Who's making calls? And more importantly, who's taking accountability if this gamble goes sideways? The Browns just handed the keys to a rookie quarterback in one of the toughest divisions in football, while simultaneously creating friction with their own staff and alienating trusted voices in the locker room. That's not just risky, it's dangerous. And that danger extends far beyond Sunday. This is a turning point in the franchise's identity. The Browns were building something, slowly, imperfectly, but methodically. And now, all of that has been put on hold to fast-track a quarterback into stardom, whether he's ready or not. Make no mistake, Shedeur Sanders is talented. No one's denying that. But elevating him under these circumstances doesn't set him up to succeed. It sets him up to be the symbol of a franchise at war with itself. Because now, every snap he takes is loaded with tension. Every throw is a referendum, not just on his ability, but on the organization's decision-making. The pressure? Immense. The expectations? Sky high. The risk of failure? Catastrophic. And that weight isn't fair to any young player, let alone one stepping into a fractured team with playoff hopes and unresolved leadership drama. Sanders didn't ask to be the face of a franchise meltdown. But that's what this has become. The fan reaction? Explosive. Some are thrilled, desperate for a spark, a new face, a new era. Others are furious, mourning the loss of stability and questioning what exactly the team is trying to build. The media? Locked in. The Browns are now headline bait. Every pass, every quote, every loss turned into national drama. And that's exactly what ownership invited. Because when you override your football people and build around media hype, you don't just gamble on the field, you gamble on your credibility. And right now, Cleveland's credibility is slipping. Internally, the Browns are dealing with a power structure that no longer functions like a football team. Coaches want one thing. Ownership wants another. And players? They're caught in the crossfire. That's not how winning organizations operate. That's how chaos spreads. The Shedeur Sanders experiment might work out. But it didn't start from a place of readiness or cohesion. It started from tension and override. And that's a problem. Because now, everything rides on Sanders delivering right away. There's no margin for error. No time for learning curves. He has to win, and he has to win now. Not because it makes football sense, but because it's what the owner demanded. And that's not development. That's desperation. If it works, the Browns buy themselves temporary relief from scrutiny. If it doesn't, they're not just facing losses, they're facing organizational collapse. Because you can't keep undermining your coaches, splitting your locker room, and expecting everything to hold together on Sundays. This isn't just a quarterback controversy. It's a structural crisis. And the league is watching. Because what's happening in Cleveland isn't unique, it's just the most blatant version of a growing trend. Owners pushing football operations out of the way. Star power dictating development timelines. Media narratives influencing depth charts. And in the process, competitive integrity is being blurred. What we're seeing is a shift. Away from football-first logic and toward short-term spectacle. Cleveland didn't just make a personnel move, they made a statement. Branding wins. Hype wins. Control wins. The Browns now live or die by this decision. If Shedeur Sanders thrives under pressure, delivers wins, and unites a fractured team, he won't just save the season, he'll save face for a front office that just lit its own credibility on fire. But if he struggles? If the team stumbles? If the locker room fractures further? The Browns will be the cautionary tale. The example of what happens when leadership breaks down and ownership forgets that football decisions require more than buzzwords and headlines. The next few weeks will define more than just a season. They'll define who this franchise is. A team that can adapt, regroup, and rally around its new quarterback, or a team that crumbles under the weight of its own dysfunction. Whatever happens, the Browns are at a crossroads. The decisions made now will echo far beyond this season. They'll shape the reputation, direction, and credibility of a franchise still trying to prove it belongs among the NFL's elite. And this time, the whole league is watching. If you've got thoughts on Cleveland's chaotic pivot, drop them in the comments. Is this a bold reset or an implosion in progress? Hit that subscribe button. We're tracking every twist, every snap, and every side-eye in this wild ride of a season. That's where the Browns are now. On a knife's edge. This wasn't just a quarterback trade. It was a trigger. A trigger for instability. For fan division. For internal collapse. And whether Shedeur Sanders succeeds or not, Cleveland has already exposed a fatal flaw. When leadership abandons process for impulse, the consequences aren't just on the field. They echo throughout the entire organization. So now the spotlight is on Cleveland for all the wrong reasons. And there's no more hiding. It's not just about whether Shedeur Sanders can play. It's whether the Cleveland Browns can survive this decision. Because let's be real, the Browns didn't just pull off a bold quarterback switch. They detonated the structure around their football team. The trade of Joe Flacco wasn't merely transactional. It was symbolic. A loud, chaotic siren signaling that the people at the top are no longer following traditional football logic. And whether anyone inside the building agrees or not, the direction is set. This isn't a rebuild. This is a regime flex. It's ownership telling coaches, players, and fans, we don't care what you think. We're doing it our way. And our way just handed the starting quarterback job to a rookie with zero NFL experience, in the middle of a tight AFC North playoff race, after banishing the only veteran leader holding the offensive room together, to a rival. Not just any rival. Cincinnati. A team that now benefits both tactically and psychologically from the Browns' unraveling. The Bengals didn't even have to ask twice. Flacco's knowledge of Cleveland's system is a cheat code they didn't expect to get handed. It's a gift, wrapped in dysfunction. And that's what makes this whole situation so astonishing. The Browns gave up more than a player. They gave up stability, leverage, locker room trust, and most dangerously, identity. Because what is this team now? A veteran-led playoff hopeful? A youth project hijacked mid-season? A PR machine masquerading as a football operation? That's the real damage. The Browns can't define who they are. Not to their players. Not to the media. Not even to themselves. One side of the building is fighting to develop talent slowly, strategically, like any professional team would. The other side is chasing a headline. And guess which one has the power? It's ownership's world now. Jimmy Haslam has always had a reputation for impatience. But this is something else. This is personal. It's clear now that Sanders wasn't just a football pick, he was an organizational obsession. The owner wanted him on the field. Immediately. Even if it meant fracturing the foundation beneath him. Because Shedeur didn't win the job. He was given the job. Let's not rewrite the story. Coaching staff didn't crown him. He wasn't dominating in practice, demanding a promotion through undeniable performance. He was elevated by decree. And when that happens, the message to the locker room is poisonous. It doesn't matter what you earn. It matters who the boss likes. That kind of culture is how trust dies. Veteran players already saw Flacco as the steady hand. He didn't just manage games, he stabilized them. And in a division where defenses are brutal, and every week is a slugfest, that kind of stability is priceless. Now it's gone. And in its place is a quarterback with 0 NFL starts, but all the weight of the franchise resting squarely on his shoulders. Not because he's ready, but because the people in charge said make him ready. And you can feel the tension building. In the locker room, players are looking at each other differently. Are we building a contender or a marketing campaign? Is our preparation meaningless if decisions come from above? If this is how things go now, who's next? Meanwhile, Stefanski, already coaching under immense pressure, has been publicly undercut. This isn't just a disagreement behind closed doors. This is a full-blown mutiny of football operations. How do you lead a team when everyone knows your voice doesn't matter? How do you command respect when your decisions get reversed from the top floor? These questions don't get answered with wins. They get answered with structure. And Cleveland just dismantled theirs. Let's talk about Shedeur Sanders now, because this isn't fair to him either. Yes, he's confident. Yes, he's talented. But he's being thrust into the middle of a dysfunctional storm with expectations that are way out of step with reality. People think this is just about whether he can throw touchdowns. It's not. This is about whether a 21-year-old quarterback, fresh out of college, can walk into one of the most chaotic franchises in the NFL and become the solution to a problem he didn't create. And that's the risk no one's talking about. What happens if Sanders struggles early? Not in a meltdown way. Just typical rookie bumps. Bad reads, timing issues, inconsistent drives. Every quarterback faces them. But if Sanders hits that wall, there's no support system underneath him. No veteran mentor. No coaching structure fully behind him. No buffer. Just pressure. And that pressure? It's not fair. He didn't demand to start. He didn't ask to be parachuted into a broken culture with a divided staff and playoff hopes hanging by a thread. He was forced into that spotlight, and now he has to succeed not just for himself, but to validate an entire ownership decision. That's not football. That's politics. The media, of course, is circling like sharks. One bad half? Headlines. One post-game comment? Clickbait. Everything he does will be dissected through the lens of organizational chaos. Not because it's his fault, but because this is what happens when ownership cuts the safety net out from under a rookie quarterback. This isn't a football story anymore. It's a leadership story. And right now, the Browns have a leadership crisis. In a healthy organization, there's a chain of command. Scouts evaluate. Coaches decide. Players compete. Owners provide support and resources, not game plans. But that's not happening here. In Cleveland, the script has flipped. Ownership is driving personnel decisions. Coaches are left to implement them under duress. Players are expected to fall in line without questioning the why. And that why keeps changing. One week you're pushing for the playoffs with a Super Bowl MVP under center. The next, you're rebooting midseason with a college quarterback and hoping he saves your season from implosion. There's no roadmap for that. There's no culture building in that kind of chaos. And yet, here we are. The division rivals are watching with glee. Cincinnati? Already benefiting. Baltimore and Pittsburgh? Smelling blood. Because when one team in the division melts down, the others don't wait. They capitalize. And right now, Cleveland looks vulnerable. Not because of talent, but because of instability. That's what makes a team easy to beat. Not the quarterback's arm, but the cracks in the foundation. And Cleveland just exposed theirs to the entire league. So what comes next? Best case scenario, Sanders exceeds expectations. He rallies the team, silences critics, and pulls off wins that no one saw coming. If that happens, the noise quiets, temporarily. But even then, the damage to the structure remains. The coaching staff still knows their input can be ignored. The locker room still knows hierarchy has changed. The football operations staff still knows the old rules don't apply. Worst case scenario? The pressure gets to Sanders. The team stumbles. And the decision makers double down. More chaos. More blame shifting. And a lost season that sets the franchise back years. Not because of talent, but because of dysfunction. The Browns are in crisis mode, and everyone knows it. Players. Coaches. Rivals. No one is fooled by the press releases or the carefully packaged quotes about new beginnings. This isn't a new beginning. This is a desperate reset that just blew up the team's internal compass. And now, Shedeur Sanders is stepping into the middle of that chaos with the weight of an entire franchise on his shoulders, and the pressure is relentless. This isn't just about throwing touchdowns or reading defenses. This is about becoming the face of a fractured team, managing locker room skepticism, living up to sky-high expectations, and somehow doing it all while being watched like a lab experiment by an NFL audience waiting to see if he sinks or swims. Fair? Not at all. But it's reality. Every rookie quarterback has pressure, sure. But most are given time, patience, a support system. They're brought in under the guidance of aligned leadership. They're allowed to fail quietly and grow gradually. Sanders gets none of that. He's being dropped into a divided franchise, one that just alienated its coaching staff, fired a warning shot to every veteran in the locker room, and handed the offensive reins to a 21-year-old not because he earned it, but because ownership demanded it. And that changes everything. Players know what's going on. They see when moves are made for politics instead of performance. They see when the quarterback is being used as a pawn in a bigger power struggle. And that fractures trust fast. Locker rooms run on belief. Belief in the coaching. Belief in the system. Belief in the guy next to you. And the Browns just bulldozed all three. Now the question is, can Sanders rally a team that didn't ask for this change? Can he lead guys who might not be ready to follow him yet? That's not just about talent. That's about presence. About poise. About walking into a fractured environment and pulling it back together through sheer command. And if he can't, the entire structure caves in. Because this wasn't a calculated rebuild. It was a mid-season hijacking. And when those fail, they fail loudly. The narrative is already on edge. The sports shows are circling. One bad game? He's overhyped. One sideline outburst? He's immature. One missed throw? He wasn't ready. That's the brutal reality Sanders now lives in. Everything is under a microscope. Because this wasn't just a debut. It was a referendum on ownership's vision for the team. And that referendum started the moment Joe Flacco's bags were packed and sent down I-71 to Cincinnati. Speaking of Flacco, his presence in Cincy just makes everything worse. The Browns didn't just get rid of their most experienced quarterback. They handed a direct advantage to a team that's fighting them for playoff position. It's the kind of move that makes players question if winning is even the goal anymore. And honestly, it's hard to say. This feels less like a football decision and more like an ego play. A power move made to remind everyone who really runs the show in Cleveland. And the person left holding the bag is Shedeur Sanders. A talented, charismatic, high-potential quarterback who is now being asked to clean up a mess he didn't create. So where does this go? Either Sanders exceeds every expectation and becomes the improbable hero of the year, or this becomes another chapter in Cleveland's long, painful history of dysfunction. And let's be clear, the path to success isn't just narrow, it's booby-trapped. The AFC North is unforgiving. These defenses are elite. The pressure is relentless. The media heat is white-hot. And there's no veteran fallback plan anymore. There's no security blanket. It's all on Sanders. Because ownership made sure of that. So now we wait. To see if the rookie can thrive under fire. To see if the coaching staff can stomach a reality they didn't choose. To see if the players can rally behind someone they didn't ask for. To see if the Browns can survive the chaos they created. This is more than a quarterback change. This is a test of what kind of team Cleveland really is, and what kind of leadership they're willing to follow. If you've got thoughts on this roller coaster, drop them in the comments. Think Sanders is ready to handle the heat? Or is this just the start of another Browns implosion? Hit subscribe and stay tuned. We're tracking every dramatic second of this mess.